Welcome to Living Martial Arts with Master Ray Gale, aka the Dark Master. Living Martial Arts discuss and examines the everyday exercise, philosophy, and lifestyle of the martial arts enthusiast. The host talks about his own training, past and present, and he also interviews many martial artists to discover how they continue to live their own martial arts journey. Tune in for top tips on how to get the best out of your martial art. Or perhaps you're thinking of starting a martial art. This podcast offers you an easy way to dip your toe in. Sign up for the newsletter at livingmartialarts.com and get regular updates and training tips direct to your inbox. Follow the Dark Master on Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at Living Martial Arts.
Yeah, got it.
Hi, and hello to the Living Martial Arts podcast listeners. I'm back. It's me, the Dark Master, with the next edition of the Living Martial Arts podcast. We have a great guest today. We have Master Chris Snow. A lot of you may know him. He organises regular competitions for his group, and perhaps we'll be talking about that as we go along. So, how are you doing, Master Snow?
Yeah, fine, sir. Just trying to live like everyone else now and get over what we've gone through over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's been tough, but I think I always think that the people that have martial arts, taekwondo at heart are going to survive, because that's what we do, isn't it? That's what we do, and that's what we know. That's what we live every day. So it's nice to know things are going well. But I'm going to crack straight on then with this podcast, and as I normally start, because that brings up a lot of questions about people, is really telling the listeners about your martial arts journey, how it started, how you progress, where you are now, maybe, I don't know, things for the future. I'm sure we'll talk about many things, but crack on.
Okay. Well, you want me to start there?
Yeah. You go for it. Tell us about, your sort of just generally about your martial arts start. Who you started with, why you did it. And I'm sure I'll interrupt you as you go along.
Okay. Well, I started my journey back in, it would have been about 1985.
Yeah.
Because my childhood was quite a rough childhood, so I was in and out of care. Boarding schools, home, and whatever else. But I ended up in a boarding school, which was a monthly boarding school. Yeah. And it was just, my time there, was quite rough, because it was run by ex-police officers, and there was a lot of stuff that went on inside them. The actual boarding schools. So I think by the time I got to around about 12. I chose what happens in boarding school. They you go from a monthly boarding school to a weekly boarding school to try and integrate you back into the community.
Yeah.
I chose a school that was just so rough. It was just like, I didn't realise. I mean, they said, right, here's 3 schools. And I literally just dotted the one in the middle and said, I'll go to that one. And little did I know that I was about to get a bit of a beat down and obviously see some serious stuff. And I was like, hold on a minute, I better learn how to fight, otherwise I'm going to be in trouble. Because the kids there were just like, they were just, the way it was sort of like put in Yellow Pages was something along the lines of, children with, like disability, and not disabilities like what you've got now. It's like learning difficulties. Yeah. The kids were just like, there was loads of stuff going on in their life.
Sure.
So obviously the kids were quite angry, and so like every day you get up, you get into a fight. I mean, I always tell the story to my students, and they think it's quite funny, and I don't think it's funny. I said, I'm 11 years of age. I go into this school, and this big guy comes up to me. He was like a 5th year, and he was huge, and like he's got about 7 or 8 friends with him. Yeah. And he starts talking nice to me, and he's like, hello, you new here, blah blah. And I was, it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon, which means that it's dinner time.
Yeah.
And next thing, I'm thrown against the wall, punched in the face, punched in the stomach. He beats me up, puts his hand in my pocket, takes my money. Right. And this happens for the next week, more or less every day.
Yeah.
He beats me up, takes my money, goes off and buys himself some tuck, and sort of like his mates are just laughing. I think by the time I get to Friday, I'd obviously started there on a Monday. By the time I get to Friday, I'm thinking to myself, listen, I've just been through 3.5 years of abuse from a head of care that was actually in charge of me, Hostel 4. This is actually in the last magazine that we just released.
Sure.
And I thought to myself, I need to do something because this guy's going to continue doing this for the next year until he leaves. He's like a 5th year, so he was due to leave anyway. And I remember him, I sort of positioned myself by the steps. He's come over and he's punched me in the face and he's threw me against the thing and started beating me up again. And all I could think was just like literally bear hug him. I couldn't fight for Jack. Yeah. And we rolled down these stairs, which are concrete stairs. He ends up taking the brunt because he's bigger than me and I'm like, shorter.
Yeah.
And I sort of climb up his body and I always make my students laugh because I said that I couldn't fight for Jack. I said, all I was doing was like slapping him. And I'm like, the teachers obviously come running out and sort of like, this guy's covered in blood and everything. And they thought I'd beaten this guy up. And the headmaster says to me, I've never seen anyone beat up a 5th year like that. Yeah. And I'm like, well, thankfully, no one saw what happened. His mates had seen it. Basically after that, a couple of friends sort of like, that I knew that were already at the school that were 5th years too, they said there's going to be a hit on you because if you go to these sort of schools, they kind of put like a hit on you, which means they come into your bedroom or into your dormitory about 11, 12 at night. And what they would do is put snooker balls into like a pillowcase and just beat the living daylights out of you. So I knew what was going on, but these 2 lads actually protected me. But one of them called Graham, he was a martial artist. Yeah. And he says to me, Chris, he says, you've got to learn how to fight. He goes, I'm leaving here in a year's time. And he goes, if you don't, he said, you are going to get, he goes, they're going to come looking for you because they're waiting, obviously, to seize their time to actually get you.
Right.
And I think after that, I started looking around Kung Fu, Tang Sudo. Nothing sort of suited me. Even went to one of my friends, Darren. He said to me, come and do boxing. And I went to boxing, and some reason this guy starts pulverising me in the ring, and I lift my knee up and kick him in the face. But I've never done martial arts before. The instructor says to me, he goes, you're not suitable for boxing. He goes, get out of my ring. I had a right go. And then, like I said, Graham says to me, go and try martial arts. But then eventually I found Taekwondo and found it was suitable for me because I've got 36-inch legs. So, my legs by the time I was 15, so I was much taller than everybody anyway. But even at 12, I was quite tall. Basically, my friend said to me, Tang Sudo is probably not going to be any good for you. But I tried all different things, and he was right. Taekwondo was the one. When I found that, I sort of kind of fell in love with it.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing story because people have asked me about Taekwondo and why I started, and I said, well, listen, I was a black boy growing up in the 60s in inner city Bristol. And I was small. I had to learn to fight because there was some stuff going on at that time, and obviously there was a sort of a Jamaican population in the middle of Bristol, and obviously there was a lot of racism and stuff like that, and there was still signs, no blacks, no dogs, no Irish, and still like that. So I often said to people that myself and Master Osborne, that we grew up together, and. If he was going to fight, well, I was going to fight, and if I was going to fight, he was going to fight, and we protected each other really, and that's how it was. But I actually got on quite well at school because I was a really good footballer and rugby player, and so I got the respect from a lot of people, and I was quite quite resilient, quite tough. I wasn't scared at school to get into a tackle in rugby, no matter who they were or how big they were. And I think I got a lot of respect that way. So, but once people saw I was sort of quite a good sportsman, they sort of, I was one of the guys, so to speak. So it wasn't too bad. That was secondary school because Master O and I, we went to the same junior school, but when we went to secondary schools, we went to different schools. But we always used to meet after school, and play around with each other and, play in the park and so on. But that's a really interesting story. And it's amazing, really, because, I've spoken to a lot of martial artists who, have started like that because they thought, right, I need to learn how to defend myself. Yeah. Whatever, it wasn't a sort of, I want to, do something. What shall I do? It was really out of necessity from there. So who did you... when you started Taekwondo, what sort of group were you with?
I was with a guy, actually, I've just got in touch with again. He's on my Facebook, which is Billy Weigel. And he's like I think at the moment he's like a 5th degree, but he's been, honest to God, he should be like a grandmaster now because when I started with him, he was doing this style called advanced street fighting with Taekwondo Midwest or something, I think they were called.
Oh, yeah, Midwest, yeah.
Yeah, so I was training with him. Basically, I'd done about 9 months, 10 months with him. Billy was absolutely fantastic. But what attracted me to him was it was down at the Cornwall Sports Centre, and I'd seen this poster, and he was headbutting through these tiles that were on fire. And for some unknown reason, I was like, "Oh, that's the guy I want to learn how to fight with," you know. I soon realised that obviously because Billy was like all saying to us, like, "You've got to make sure that you grade up." But I kept refusing to grade. And then I moved over to a guy called John McDonald, who actually sat down with me.
Oh yeah, I know. I remember John. Yeah,
remember John?
yeah. I remember
the dreadlocks and stuff.
Yeah. I remember him well.
Well, he was running a class in St Albans. I think he was the second dan.
Yeah.
And he sat me down and he actually said to me, there was no messing around. He said, "Look, you've got a grade." He said, "You can't." He goes, "You've been doing this for 9-10 months." He goes, "You need to grade up." And I was like, "I don't want to grade. I just want to learn to fight." And he was like, "Ain't going to work." He goes, "You need to grade up." He goes, "So that you can actually test your ability and you can see yourself." He goes, "I know that you don't really believe in grades." Then he sort of kind of pushed me in the journey, and I was with him probably for about 9 months until there was a big issue at St Albans, and because of all the aggravation, I remember John standing up and saying, because they used to, I used to be petrified to go and spar, because the guys that were there, St Albans, like at the time back in the, sort of late 80s, was like full of head cases. And he was attracting all these head cases, and everyone was beating the hell out of each other. So you'd always come out of there with busted nose, teeth broken or whatever else. And he was like, everyone was always looking to hurt each other. And I remember John just got the right ump, and he just said, "Look, you guys want to fight?" He goes, I'll hire a minibus. I'll take you down to Coventry and stand in Coventry town centre. And he goes, "I'm sure loads of people will oblige you." And then the club sort of kind of it fell apart. After that, because he was just fed up with the way that they were, the way they were treating Taekwondo. And he had some great fighters, to be honest. They were really tough, but they were just literally using it for the wrong reason. And then I went to Tony Manning, obviously, and I spent 16 years with Tony, Grandmaster Manning now. And basically he was definitely my real Taekwondo father, because he educated me correctly. But obviously because of allegiances with, obviously he was with the BUTF, I was with the BUTF for 10 years with him, but because of the way things happened between us, I had to call it a day and just say, "Look, I've got to go on my own path and obviously do my own things," because I think I always wanted to do some things myself, because I wanted to do things my own way, but I knew in the BUTF I just couldn't do it. And that's why I actually left. When people say to me, "I bet you're glad you left them because you've got," I said, No. BUTF educated us perfect. BUTF has educated some amazing fighters out there that are actually on the scene now. So no one could take that away. They produce some really good fighters and produce good quality people. It's just it's just that he did. It didn't suit me where I was, because obviously Grandmaster Choi was a very strong force, and if I'd gone to him and said, "Look, I want to do some championships, I want to do this, I want to do that," I don't think he would have allowed me to do it the way I wanted to.
No, definitely not. I remember Raymond Choi a lot. He came down and graded us in Bristol a couple of times in the late 70s, because Master E couldn't make it for whatever reason. And obviously at that time, Master E was doing bulk of the gradients, and we were with UKTA at the time. I remember Raymond Choi. I think the last time I saw him, I think he'd recently gone into a wheelchair at that time. I think at that point. It was. You mentioned some interesting names there. John McDonald, Master Ogborn used to spar with him because they were the same weight category, and they always used to have quite a ding dong at tournaments, championships, and so on. And it was good. I always wondered. I don't know. He sort of disappeared from the scene. Probably late 80s, maybe, or a bit before that. Always wondered what happened to him. It was a shame, because he had some good bites with Master Ogborn. It was good. And also I remember all these names come back to me now from the 70s and 80s. But going back to what you said about the BUTF, they did have some great fighters. I remember, I think it was the very first BTC competition I fought a guy from the BUTF, and he was one of Master Wolf's students at the time. He had fair hair, and I cannot remember his name, and he was an awesome kicker. Awesome kicker. And I remember I fought him over 2 rounds. I thought, I cannot outkick this guy at all. He's so good. So in the end, I started just using my hands, just getting in. So I thought there's no point in kicking him because he's going to outkick me. So I started using my hands. But it was a nice bout, and they did have some great, some good fighters. BTF, I will say. Really, really enjoyed my time at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I've had certain grandmasters sort of said to me over the years, "Oh, you know, the best thing you ever done was left the BUTF," and I'm like, I will say to people, look, you know what? Understand this. I will never slate the BUTF because I loved them. I loved everything. I loved Grandmaster Choi. I had many sessions where he took me 1-to-1 and helped me. But it's just basically it didn't suit what was going on, and I got to a point where, I got beaten up when I was probably about 14, 15. Right. And I thought I was Jack the lad, and I had a fight with this guy. I mean, I've always been quite fearless, and I was stood outside my house, obviously doing some training, and this guy walks past with his mates, and I knew who he was. He was like a local yobbo, and he was a real freaking hard nut. I learned it afterwards, but I learned a hard way, and I don't know what he said. He starts calling me names, walks down the road, and I think, okay, I'm going to go out. So I said to Mum, and goes, "Mum, I'm going down the road." My dad was dying of cancer, and he died about a year later. But what happened is I'm going down the road to get some chips. I've gone down the chip shop, and as I've gone into the chip shop, he starts calling me names again, and I realise how big he was. And I remember thinking to myself, "Chris, retreat, you've got to get out of here because you're going to get your head kicked in." And I did get my head kicked in. And he literally walked up behind me. And basically, I bought me chips and stuff, and I sort of kind of retreated, let him swear at me and everything. And I thought, he's bigger than me, he looks a lot powerfuler. And I'd heard all these stories, and for the first time in my life, I thought, you know what, just walk away from this. And I sort of kind of walked away, but it was too late. He wanted to fight, and I remember hitting this guy with a turning kick in the face when he grabbed me around on the collar, and he punched me in the face. So I kick him with a turning kick in the face, and the next thing, I'm on the floor and I'm coming round conscious. He's got his knee in my throat and he's punching me in the face. So I look like the Elephant Man for about 4 or 5 weeks after. And I learned a very valuable lesson. I mean, and the weird thing about it is that he actually became one of my real close friends. Because he came to me afterwards and he said, he goes, you gave me a good fight. He goes, even though you're younger than me and whatever. He goes, and the fact that you had the guts to stand up against me, because most people just bottle it because of my reputation. And I thought, well, I'm not going to bottle it. I said, and that's obviously the way I've been brought up. And obviously what was happening with going back to the BUTF, I kept feeling like when I was, after that day, I started training, and I had done, since I was about 15, I think. And it was, basically, I do 2 hours every day. So even if I'm going out and teaching, like on a Monday, I'll be teaching for 4 hours. I'll be doing 6 hours of Taekwondo. And I like to get involved with my students and do the fitness. I'd spar with them. I do everything I can, as much as I can, though it's getting harder as you get older. But and I was and I was forever arguing with Grandmaster Choi, because I was just saying, no, it ain't gonna happen. And it was getting to the point where I was kind of being disrespectful to him, because I was going, no, I don't care what you say. You don't talk to my students like that. He'd come to a grade and he'd have a go at my students and say something about their weight or whatever. And I'd go, hold on, you don't talk to them like that. And he'd say to me, if you've got a problem, he goes, leave the BTF. So eventually I kind of felt like I had no choice. I always say to everybody, the amount of love and respect I had for that guy. And obviously even my own instructor, I don't talk to him now, because we've had issues. But as far as I'm concerned, it's just like, I still love him because he's my Taekwondo father. And he's the person that nurtured me and took me to where I am and taught me. And, and God, Tony Manning, his sessions were so hard. I'm often criticised by my own students that the sessions are so hard, and the black belts just say, oh my God, you kill us sometimes. And I'm like, well, I'm only teaching the way my instructor taught me, because everything we do is a learned behaviour, really. And, but you try and remove the rot, things that your instructor didn't feel happy with, and you try and enhance what they've done. Like, I find when I talk to instructors about, obviously, Grandmaster Choi, I say to him, fantastic coach, fantastic instructor, amazing at more or less everything he does. But his people skills was to be desired, because like he had one way of doing things, and it was like, if you didn't like it, bog off, off you go down the road, and he didn't care. And I think with that attitude, you can't, because society has moved forward. You can't do that anymore. You can't shout at your students. You can't say to parents, like one of his famous sayings was, parents, drop your kids off outside the class and clear off. You can't say that to parents. You've got to try and work with them. Keep them coming, to keep your finances going,
It is tough. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I didn't have that many run-ins with him, but Master Ogborn had a number of run-ins with him.
That doesn't surprise me.
Number of run-ins, definitely. It was always it was funny because Master Reed was originally doing our gradings, and then a couple of times, as I said, when Master Choi came down, and once he came down the first time, everyone went, "Oh, we don't want him back again."
He was tough.
He was.
Yeah.
There we go. Well, you mentioned a bit about about your teaching and so on. Do you just run a number of schools in your area, and do you teach throughout the week? I mean, I currently teach sort of 4 days a week. I tend to do gradings at weekends and so on, and the odd seminar. But I mean, I found that I like to put a bit of time away for my guitar playing. I like playing guitar, harmonica. I also a number of different things. I've got a few motorbikes, and I like to go out and ride those and just chill out when I've got time as well. So although I could do more teaching, I do a couple of private lessons as well, but although I could do more teaching, I try and just keep that time for myself. How do you sort of manage your week?
It's quite hard. I mean, I obviously weekends I DJ, which I've been DJing for about 20 years now. I just love. I think. I mean, my two other hobbies that I've got is one is obviously tropical fish keeping, which I've done for 25 years.
Oh wow, that's fantastic.
So like this morning, for instance, just before we came on here, I was literally doing a water change, but my tank is actually huge. So I've had to take 5 buckets of water out, clean it, do the filters, clean everything, and then get it all ready. But it just because every 2 weeks, the thing with fish keeping, every 2 weeks you've got to basically keep on top and make sure the ammonias are kept down, and just basically keep it like the water levels correct. Otherwise, you do lose fish quite a bit, and it's quite an expensive hobby.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
everything else. DJing is an expensive hobby, even though I'm semi-professional as a DJ. I don't do clubs. I'm more sort of like people often say to me, "Oh, do you mix?" Blah blah blah, and I'm like, I do when I'm at home, but I never do it when I'm out, because when I'm out, I'm just like, I don't want to be one of them DJs that's mixing, and then you got 2 galloping horses. Sometimes a mix goes wrong, and you're just like, oh no, it's not worth it. So I would rather literally just do the, blend it in, put the next record on, fill the floor, and worry about obviously keeping the floors busy all the time. But I am my passion is music. I love 80s, 90s. So I've done a gig a few weeks ago, and it was weird. They said to me, "Oh, we've only got 20 people coming," but it was one of the best gigs I've done. And it was a 70s night, so they all turned up looking like Mick Jagger, T-Birds, and all that, and it was great because I was like in my element, playing all this old music that I'd grown up on, 70s music. So I was literally doing all that, all doing the rock groups, which was really good. And they just went mad. And even though you had 20 people, there was more atmosphere than some of the parties I do, where I've got like 200-300 people standing in front of me, and you don't get no atmosphere. You get them sort of like what I call pockets. You might get 30-40 people on the floor. Then they go off and have a drink, because the genre's changed. You've gone from the 80s to the 90s, and then obviously the 90s crowd come along. They're a little bit more rowdy because they're younger. And I find with the youngsters, I've done one, I think it was back in November, and it was a marquee. And they said to me, "Oh, yeah, there's only going to be 50 18-year-olds there, so 18 to 21." And it ended up being like 300 people there. And it was just like, it was an amazing night. But, I think Taekwondo's my release. It's how I release a lot of the stuff that's gone on in my past. Before, basically what it is It's in the magazine. It was just basically I went into this boarding school. I was in a hostel called Hostel 4. The head of care, basically the head of care, he ran like a paedophile ring. So obviously what happened was the kids were basically interfered with. Luckily I was only molested. And then because what happened, when it happened to me, he used to take you down to the wing and then put his hands down your trousers and all that. So for some, even though the way I was as a youngster, I ended up punching him in the groin. And this guy bent over, and then for 3.5 years after, he just literally, he just treated me really bad. Like, he grabbed me by the hair and pulled me down the wing. Basically one time I was sitting underneath a snooker table. A kid, one of the other kids, I was about 9.5. He pushed I think it was like a dinky car. It's gone into his foot. This guy stood up. He's gone absolutely mad. And then Brian, who stood by the side of me, he's only been there a couple of weeks. They're all crying, all the kids. So I'm one of the oldest kids. And obviously this treatment's been happening all the time. And I sort of kind of look and I think, oh, Christ, he's after someone. And he tried to grab me. And as he's pulled me out, like, from underneath the snooker table, my head's knocked the top of the snooker table. I've lost consciousness. And then he's lifted me up and slapped my legs until I've ended up with welts all over my legs. And bruising. But he was a nasty piece of work. But then, the way I was through my childhood was I obviously bottled a lot of this up. So it wasn't until he hung himself, because 6 kids went forward.
Oh, wow.
So like 6 kids went forward, but they obviously, unfortunately were raped by the guy, and he was an absolute piece of work. With kids like myself, we sort of stood in the background. When he died, I remember one of the teachers had phoned me. I think it was that Friends Reunited or something. And she contacted me via that, and she said, he's hung himself on the day of sentencing. And something happened to me. I had like a small nervous breakdown. I was about 38. And what happened was I literally just, I closed down my clubs. And for some unknown reason, I kind of said, well, that's it. I'm done. I'm done with Taekwondo. And I felt like, for me, I felt like I'd been trying to protect myself in case I ever met this guy. And I was so angry with what he had done to me and the other kids. But yet when he died, I'd kind of lost everything. But yet my wife bought me a book, which was Dog the Bounty Hunter. It was his and it was his story. And I think there was something in there that grabbed me, that I actually realised that, you know what, I've been doing Taekwondo for myself. I haven't been doing it for him. And I went back to Taekwondo, and what happened is, for 11 years now, I feel I've been living the dream, Before I was kind of practicing because I had a lot gone on in my past, and, I haven't done no counselling. I've had no counselling. Writing bringing it out and talking to people has helped me a lot. But I think now, even on my belt, everybody that meets me, they always say, what is that? Because I've got a thing that says the promise was achieved. My dad died when I was 16. And I remember, because he obviously had a brain tumour, and I remember basically that's when I went off the rails, got in loads of fights, got in loads of trouble, was arrested, you name it, I've had it. I've kind of lived a very colourful life. And so when Dad died of cancer, I went off the rails, started fighting all the time. But then a friend of mine, he actually, again, I quit Taekwondo for 6 months, I think it was, it was about 6 months. Got involved with drugs, got involved with a local gang. We were all constantly fighting. Anyone who wanted to fight, we'd get in a car and go and fight them. Then this, my family started getting the right hump with me, because it was like, I was treating my mum bad. I was treating my sisters bad. I've got 4 sisters. And then my sister and me, my eldest sister, she decided to punch me a couple of times. I didn't hit her back or anything. I was angry. And then they had some friends around the house for tea. And this old guy was about 45 called Terry. I mean, you probably would have seen this on Facebook. But it's a fantastic story, because I steamed out the house to my sister, don't you ever put your effing hands on me again. You do that again, I'll smack you straight in the mouth, blah, blah, blah. I was angry. And then this old guy sort of come running down the street, and he's about 45, and he's like, "Oi, I want a word with you." And I'll turn around and goes, "You want some?" And he goes, "Yeah, come on then." He didn't throw a punch. He grabbed me, and he was like a python. He literally held onto my neck, and he put his legs around me. We were on the floor. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't do nothing. And then anger turned into tears.
Yeah,
And then this guy sat with me for about an hour and a half, and just sort of said to me, you're involved with drugs. He said, you're drinking a lot. He said, you're fighting all the time. He said, what happened to Taekwondo? And he was the guy that actually brought me back to Taekwondo.
All right, yeah.
He got me out of the gangs. He got me back on the road to success again. And that was obviously when I was 16.
Yeah.
So then in 2016, he actually came to our award ceremony, which is the 25th year of my clubs. And I introduced him to everybody. And I said, those of you that are here, I said, and that know me, I said, this is the guy that actually put me back into Taekwondo. And that was the one guy, a guy called Terry Hobbs, who sadly died I think it was probably about 2-3 months back. So I was quite gutted about that. But, again, when I met him, I hadn't seen him for 30 odd years. But I remember what happened at 16. The reason why I've got this writing on my belt is at 16, I was sat outside. I was very angry. I was angry with the world. I was angry with Dad that he was going to be leaving me. And they said to me, you've got to go and say goodbye. And that's the hardest thing you can actually do. And I remember holding my dad's hand and just saying to him, one day, I will be a master. I'll make you proud. And then from there, obviously, when I got my master's in 2016, basically I decided, the 27-year promise would be put on my belt. So it's always the main point of conversation when people see me. What is that? And I tell them the story, and they go, "That's a lovely story." It's nice to know that you stay true to that. And I said, "Trust me, it's not been easy," but I said, because I got there to the masters. I said, I'm put it on my belt. I won't have it, on my 8 or 9 or whatever. It's just literally for the 7 because it's like that was my promise. Now, like I said, I feel like I'm doing Taekwondo for myself. And I love training in Taekwondo because I feel that not in everyday life, I'm on 3 cylinders, but when I'm in a Taekwondo class, probably the same as you and anyone else who's listening, you're on 5 cylinders, because it's such an amazing high, Yeah,
it is. That's a fantastic story. It really is. I won't mention the name, but there's another master that I know who has told me a similar story. He grew up in a children's home. And some of the things he told me that went on, I was thinking, wow, I was, well, you were quite lucky, but my mother was my inspiration, and she was the person that encouraged me to do what I did and what I'm doing today. I was quite a bright kid. I went to at the time, a grammar school, actually. I passed my 11 plus. And when I left school, I was an aircraft engineer. I worked as a development engineer at Rolls-Royce. I was working on the Concorde engine. That was fantastic. And my mum was so pleased. But then I remember coming home and saying, I want to give up and be a Taekwondo instructor. And my dad lost his mind, but my mum said, "Look, I believe in you. If you want to do it, and it's your, you feel you can do it, just go for it." And she supported me even to the day she died. And when she died, I was holding her hand as she passed. She meant the world to me. And the other person that was there with me, as my mum was passing away, was Master Ogborn. And
oh my God!
We were both there at the same time, and. I get emotional thinking about it, but sort of coming back to that, the friend that I have who's quite started martial arts again, Taekwondo in the 70s. He grew up in a children's home, and he went through a period. It's very similar to yours of violence, and fights and the usual stuff. Exactly, to be honest, a very similar story to what you're telling there.
I think, to be honest with you, I think any kids that have been in boarding schools and homes and stuff, I find, I often say to people, obviously through my colourful past, as if to say, I don't go too much into detail with students because you don't want them to know, obviously, your past. But I will say to them, the biggest problem was with boarding schools, they kind of, you turn 16, they push you out the school, push you out the door. They don't tell you, what to expect. So obviously when I left school, it was like literally I was pushed out the door and I was told, go off and fly or whatever. And I think, if they'd educated us properly, from 16 up to about, I think, 20.
Yeah.
And so many fights and troubles and whatever else. And my fuse used to be so short, it's ridiculous. But yet now, because I've had kids, when I first had my first kid, for instance, basically my fuse became a lot bigger. Yeah. So then I started thinking, and obviously I think as an instructor, you become very, very confined and controlled, because people do, as you can imagine, when I'm DJing, sometimes, I've had people say to me, if you don't play my record, I'm going to kick your head in. And you're just like, nah, this ain't happening. You do. You start seeing the red mist, and then you think, hold on a minute, behave yourself. I'm not going to say that I had one situation where one guy, we were doing a garage night, R&B garage night. Yeah. Fantastic night. And this guy came over, asked for a record. I said to him, I haven't got it. I'll play you, basically something else by him. Yeah. Comes over about 10 minutes later. He's absolutely drunk out of his head. And he said, if you don't do this, I'm going to rape your wife. I'm going to do. And I literally I went on the microphone. I said to the guys, about 300 people. I went, ladies and gentlemen, I said, I'll be back in 5 minutes. I just need to sort something out. And I literally walked across the dance floor, grabbed this guy by the throat, took him through the double doors and threw him on the grass. I shut both the doors and put a chair by the door so no one could get out. His mates could get out. Yeah. And I said to him, repeat what you just said. And he wouldn't. He was, I was messing around, and he was like really scared. Yeah. I walked back in and everyone was clapping, and they were like, his friends come up to me and said, we heard what he said. We're really sorry about that. Yeah. But the next day, the hotel were like, I was thinking, they're going to sack me. But actually, they called me in because I had a contract with them. Yeah, and they just said to me, they said, look, we know what happened. Then a year later, I'd done the same thing, another 300 people there, sort of same group of lads there, but they didn't have this guy there. And they said, they said, after what he'd done, we've obviously disowned him because he was bang out of order what he said. He said, I'll rape your wife and I'll rape your kids. I said, I weren't having that. I said, I didn't hit him, but to this day, obviously the only thing I did do, which could be classed as an attack, was I grabbed him by the throat and I was holding him really tight and threw him onto the grass and just said to him, repeat what you said. Had he repeated, I don't know what I would have done. I probably would have hurt him, but I think I was so angry with what he'd said. But thankfully, his friends kind of saved my job, and the manager sort of said, no, we understand what you've done, but in future, you must make sure you contact the doorman. And I was like, the problem is, I said, it's all right saying contact the doorman. The doorman are never around when you need them. Yeah. I said, it's like security, police. I said, you're getting your head caved in, you've got to fight back or whatever and defend yourself. I said, they're never around. I said, they're dealing with something else.
Well, do you know what? It's funny. We got certain parallel lives, because I actually used to do a bit of relief DJing, believe it or not.
Really?
At a place close to, in fact, close to where I train now. There was a friend of mine who was a black belt, and he used to do a DJ. He used to be DJing, and he said, look, when I'm not there, do you want to take over? So I used to do some relief stuff for him, and I quite enjoyed it. I remember a few years ago, a woman came up to me and said, oh, did you used to do, you were a DJ at my wedding. Oh, it's really stuff like that. So that was quite nice. But also with the music, I was very, very passionate, particularly about late 70s, early 80s breakdancing. I used to be a breakdancer.
Oh yeah, breakdancing, yeah.
So I could still do a little bit now. I do a bit in the class. I get the kids sort of copying me and doing a bit of locking and popping, and I quite enjoy that. But music has always been one of my passions as well. I love all genres of music. Actually, I do, and I sort of play guitar, and I like 1920s, 30s blues as well, finger picking, and right up to I saw Prince 5 times at Wembley, for example, Wembley Arena, who was a great entertainer. I like all types of music, and I can take different things from different genres, whether it be blues, rock, soul, R&B. I love it all. And music's great. It's just such a release, and like I said, I love DJing, but it is getting harder, to be honest with you, because it's just like, if you get like weddings are a nightmare. If you get a bridezilla, you're in trouble.
You know, 'cause, I mean, I've had a couple of them, and they're just really hard work to deal with. And it's like all you're praying for is can't wait for the end of the night because you're done. Because even though you pack the floor, they're just like the bridezilla is just constantly in your ear, and you're just like, oh my God, seriously. You can see that the floor is busy. You can see everyone's dancing, but yet they want everything their way, and you're just like, oh my God, you know. And once it's over, I'm kind of like just biting my lip, you know, and they're sort of still perching in your ear. You didn't do this, and you're like, no, but the floor was busy. So you can't complain. But unfortunately, when people book the discos, some of them are very intent on saying, I want it my way. And it's like, You know, I mean, I had a woman who got married, and she said to me, it's got to be all country western. Well, I set up at 3:00. They came in at 3:30. And by 5:00, everybody had left. And this woman's in tears, crying her eyes out, saying to me, you know, basically, you know, what's happened? And I said, you told me that I'm not allowed to come off country western. I told you 3 times what was going to happen. And so you didn't listen to me. And it just ended up where, you know, I don't know. It just, you know, I was so devastated myself because she was there in tears, her and her husband. And I was like, you've totally messed this up. And I even said to her when I'd done the contract, I said, you have to understand, if you choose your own music, I said, your guests are going to leave. I said, when I do a wedding, I'm doing 4 or 5 different genres of different music. I said, and them 4 or 5 genres of music, it spans 10 years on each one, and therefore you're catering for everybody. You're not catering just for one person. And she, you know, I actually said to the woman, I took the money back over. I said, look, there's the envelope, there's the money. I said, don't worry about it. There's no charge. And they came over to me and they said, no, look, it's our fault. We understand. You know, you done fantastic. And I said, well, I did say to you, country western is not going to be a good thing. But unfortunately, some people are very dedicated to their own style. And it's like, you can have your own style. So if for instance, you phone me up and say, I want to do a disco, blah, blah, I'd say to you, you can have 30 of your own tracks. Outside of that, you've got to let me run the night the way I'm going to run it. That you've got 2.5 hours of, you know, different sort of tracks. Because normally I do half an hour of like 70s, half an hour, 80s, half an hour, 90s, and it'll be all bangers. So people really, you know, you're filling the floor all the time. But if you came to me and said, I've got 4.5 hours worth of music, you're going to play the music I ask, I'm going to say to you, that ain't going to happen because you're going to destroy the whole night. But people don't understand that, unfortunately.
No, well, the thing is that they have an impression on the mind. But, you know, when you've done something, it's a bit like Taekwondo, isn't it? When people come and go, well, why don't you do this? And, well, this is my class. I know how to run it. You know, and they don't realise that actually behind that you've got years and years of experience of doing something. You know, where they've just come for 5 minutes to think, well, actually, that's not right. No, sorry. You know, you said a number of things there. And I know you mentioned about, you know, you said about not having counselling. And I had some counselling. I had some counselling for some issues that I had. And I found it really beneficial. But I don't know about you. One thing that I started doing in the last 2 to 3 years, I actually started, because I'm quite a hyper person. I do everything at 150 miles an hour. But I actually started meditating and breathing, and I never ever thought that I would be able to sit still for long enough to be able to do that. I don't know whether you've tried it, whether you thought about it, or you know whether you do any. I don't know. I found it really tough when I first started, just sitting still and breathing, and not doing anything. Which was never, ever me. Never, ever me. I remember my uncle, when I was, I can't remember how old I was. I want to say sort of 7 or 8. Or it may have been a bit older than that, actually. But he offered me some money if I could sit still for 3 minutes. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't get that money. I couldn't get it. Yeah. So I gave up in the end because the 3 minutes was just too long to sit still. But I started sort of breathing, meditating, and I try and do a little bit on a daily basis. I don't know whether you've ever tried it or whether you ever thought about trying.
I've tried it years ago. Somebody that I think is when I done a friend of mine was doing Wing Chun, and he tried to introduce me to a way of doing it. So I was sitting on the bed, the lights are out. I was in the wing. I'm sitting on the bed, and he was sort of saying to me, "Oh, just imagine that you're, at the beach, sitting on the beach, and all you can hear is the waves." So I'm doing this, and whether I fell asleep or whatever happened, I don't know what happened. But one moment I was on the bed, the next moment I was on the floor, which was like cold tiles, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And there was a heavy bump, and it's like I'd ended up cracking my head and everything. I thought, "No, I won't do that again." So no, I mean, it's people do say to you that the meditation is very good for you, very good for the soul. It's food for the thought, isn't it, or food for the soul?
Yeah, I think as I've got older, my age has got a 6 in it now. So I've come to that point where I thought, I'm gonna try this, and actually I do quite sort of enjoy it. It just gives me a little bit of a break. I have to stop. I have to just set myself, and I do feel a lot better afterwards for it. So anybody listening to this, have a try, or if you want to drop me a note, then please do. Well, we're coming towards the end, but before we finish, I wanted to ask you about your competitions that you organise. I've done it myself. I know you've come along to some in the past. I find it good, but I find it really tiring and very. Oh man, the night before, I can't sleep.
Stress is ridiculous.
I'm in a room, and I don't know whether people listening to this, whether they understand what goes into organising an event. But I had sleepless nights, nightmares. 2 days before the event, just trying to make everybody feel good and comfortable and make sure that everything goes right. So, how do you cope with it?
I don't think. Obviously, we've now sort of hosted around about 30 competitions. And pre-pandemic, we were getting sort of 450, 425 every time, which we've seen a massive decrease down to around about 260, 280. I think people are. I don't know how you feel, but for me, I think even with obviously DJing, with the clubs, with championships, definitely a lot of people are still very, very scared of this, this illness, etc. And COVID. I have my views on it. I'm very, very political, but I try not to put them out too much, because obviously there are a lot of people that sort of jump on you. Oh, you're wrong, blah blah blah. And I'll just say, okay, you know what? You have your opinion. My opinion on it is totally going to be different to everyone else. And I've seen the championships, like I say, the numbers just drop. And it is quite scary, because you think to yourself, and especially with what's going on now, with the war in Ukraine. Suddenly we've got the cost of living has gone up. I've got instructors that are saying to me, well, we can't come down from Derby because it's costing too much, can't come down from here. But we're still getting people from Scotland, Wales, even Ireland, Poland, they're still coming in. But it's just, I don't know. I think at the moment I'm looking and I'm sort of saying to myself, this is quite tough. We've got another competition, which is Taekwondo Pure, and that's on the 5th of June. And it's, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I don't know, is it going to work? We've got all the belts, we've got £4,500 tied up in it. And we're like, well, if 2 weeks before we haven't got enough competitors, we'll have to scrap it. I'm also thinking, what's going to happen with all the belts? We're the only ones that have actually put a Taekwondo Championships black belts only and for belts. And yet we're not getting the attendance, or what I see on the actual system itself that actually takes all the attendees. I've seen probably half a dozen people enter, but I'm hoping that's going to change in the next few weeks. But I think it's an extremely tough thing to do, to host the championships, because like you say, you're running around on adrenaline all day. I suffer from cramp, and I tend to push my body to such a level where I might not sleep, say, for 24 hours before, 48 hours before. And then I'll go to the championships and I've got bags under my eyes, look like you could put your shopping in. You've got people saying to you, oh God, you look really tired. And you're like, well, you host the championships and you come and talk to me afterwards, because it's one of the hardest things. And of course, you're always dealing with complaints. You're dealing with people, will come up to you and say, it should be, you should be doing this. And I'm like, no, this is how we do it. And how we run our championships is pretty different to everyone else, because we have our 5 to 12-year-olds. We have them in the morning, and we say to them, you've got to be there at 8:30, and they're always finished by 12 o'clock. So all the parents love that. Then we have colour belts. I think it's from 12 till 2. and then we have our black belts from 2 till 7. So we have like 5 hours for black belts alone. And it works really well because it means you've got more or less 3 competitions. It doesn't mean that you've got, the problem that I see with competitions, and I'm not talking about yours or anyone else's. I'm just saying that competitions that I go to, they want to get everybody in to the championships, and they want to bring, I don't know, 600-700 people together with another, 1,500 spectators. And it's like, it's just so disarray for me, and it's so confusing because I think, why do you do that? And it's, yes, you can come to our championships and you go, okay, they've got, with the juniors, it's packed, as you can imagine, because it's all mums and dads and aunties and uncles and brothers, sisters and granny, and everyone else is actually coming to watch them fight. Even if they've got a hope in hell, they're still there to fight and watch, But obviously in the afternoons, if you look at some of our pictures, you go, oh, there's only a few spectators. But of course it is, because most of them are coming by car, coming on their own, coming in.
I get that,
But it just seems to me a lot of tournament hosts are more interested in sort of filling it up and making it look so good and say, look at us. And it's like, well, why would you do that? Have a black belt there from 8 a.m. in the morning, and then he doesn't fight till 7 in the evening. That's really unfair for me. It's like, just for me, it doesn't feel right. So I've always sort of said that, we shouldn't be having loads of spectators in, because to me, it's like, that's not the real reason why the competition's been held. It's been held for all the people that are competing. And, like I say, it works nicely because the crossovers are always hard. So 12 till probably 12:30. People are moaning because there's no seats. And it's like, well, because you've got two tournaments that are literally clashing. But 9 times out of 10, the parents, as soon as little Johnny's been knocked out or they've won the medals and picked them up, they go anyway. But for me, it's a very stressful thing, running tournaments. You're just like you say, you can't sleep. It's pressure. I mean, I always ask people on our Facebook group, I say, look, let us know. Don't go and bitch about us. Come back to us and tell us, and we'll try and learn from that, because it's the only way you can learn. We're going to make mistakes.
Well, I agree. And, I'll have to, I've got to be honest, in the last a few years, because I've been trying to do a few more things for myself. I haven't been to many other people's tournaments. I know my students have come along to yours and they've had a good time. And I have promised myself that I'd perhaps do that a little bit more and go along and see how people are doing, see how people are running their events. And maybe we can. One thing I'm not is I'm not proud to say if somebody's doing something, I think, wow, that is good, I'm going to do that. And go to someone and say, wow, how do you do that? And ask people for advice. Never been, too up myself to ask people for advice or to say, wow, that's a lot better than we do it. So
we all learn from each other, don't we? I mean,
definitely.
Everything we do. It's like, even if you look at, like I said earlier on in the when we started the meeting, I said that everything's learned behaviour. If your instructor teaches you hard, you're going to teach hard because you believe that's the way, And I think a very common thing that I see with teaching, I often see black belts, instructors or people that have turned into instructors and they've failed. And the reason why they've failed is because I run classes. I don't know about yourself, but in the peak, my classes had 50, 60 students in at one time. So like they're big classes. Even now I'm sort of running on sort of like 35, 40 students per class. So my classes are big. So, of course, those that have been trained by us and they obviously become instructors, they think that, I'm going to run a big school. And they don't understand the amount of hours and the amount of money it takes to actually generate them students through the door.
And years. Years as well.
The years that we put in. There's some real heartache stories that you just think, oh, my God, I've heard people that have built up classes and they've been destroyed. And, like I've had instructors that, for instance, come to me and said, my school's been more or less closed down because one student. And I said to him, and I told you that one of the skills we need to learn as instructors is actually if someone starts, being very derogatory to you, you take them to, because with me, I take them to the side and I'll try and educate them, just say, look, you're being derogatory. You're talking when I'm talking. You're basically saying things in the changing room that you shouldn't be saying about me in the class. If you're not happy, then you need to leave, because one bad apple will just destroy the whole thing.
Well, it can, and to be honest, I've I've had that, and I've had to say to people,
fair share.
I had to say, like, this is time that I need to go. There's the door.
Yeah.
Okay, go somewhere else. And I've had to say that on a number of occasions. And I think you have to be strong enough to do that.
New instructors don't realise how much stress, because obviously they just think that you turn up, you rock up at the class, you put a few pads out, you kick the pads, and that's it. But they don't understand that sometimes you've got to deal with. I don't know about you, but I've dealt with students that their mum's got cancer, and I've actually been there. I've had a guy that phoned me 2 o'clock in the morning, was going to take his life, and I had to go to his house, call in the emergency services, and actually talk him down because he wanted to talk to me. And it's tough. People don't realise that we're kind of, I don't know, I think we're advertising gurus, we're consultants, we're therapists.
You have to be everything. I mean, I had, this is going back many years ago now, but a young girl who couldn't tell her parents that she was pregnant, so she phoned me up, told me and wanted me to tell her parents, and stuff like that. So wow. I mean, you have to do it all. We don't sign up for it, but unfortunately, that's what you get. And
it's the unwritten rules of being the coach. And I think the other thing is, I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, when I say I've said it in the past to my students, and they say, I said, an instructor, a real instructor, loves his students.
Oh yeah.
I said, and when they get that disloyalty of that student, packing up and going to another club, especially if you've nurtured them from white belt all the way up to black or 2nd degree, 3rd degree, and they go to another club and they're more or less having a go at you all the time, and you're like, how did that happen? How did we get to this juncture?
Yeah,
where I don't feel I've done anything for this person. It's just that they've, I find there's a lot of people out there, or should we say a few people out there, that kind of coerce, some of your students into their clubs.
Yeah.
They think the grass is greener. Yeah. And then, they don't want to come back because they've realised they've made a massive mistake.
Yeah.
And it is quite hard. But as instructors, we get so involved because we're passionate about what we're doing, and I don't think there's anything more rewarding for me than seeing a student who comes in, who's got, for instance, I've got a couple of kids that are autistic, and they're getting their black belts, and once they get their black belts, it's an amazing feeling, because you think, I've changed their life, I've given them some sort of ground and some sort of set of rules that will help them in their everyday life, definitely. But as instructors, we I think we overcommit to it, but I mean, sometimes you think, I wish I could be hard and just be very still faced with them, but you can't, because they've got a problem, there's a problem, and like a father, because you've been there all the time, you can say, whatever the name is of the person, you just say, I can see there's something wrong, what's the matter, do you want to talk about it? And then the next thing, they're giving you everything, and you're like, I wish I'd asked. Oh my God, because now I've got to try and deal with this.
Well, I'm going to be wrapping it up, but the last thing I want to say is that recently somebody put it on Facebook, they said, what should you have as a talent for an instructor? And I said, a big heart, and you've got to love people.
Yes.
And I would stand by that. And obviously you do. I know that. I know, people that have spoken about you and said about you. And, I want first of all, I want to say thank you very, very much for coming on this podcast. That's the first thing. The second thing is I want to say I'd love to speak to you again in the future and catch up.
Oh, definitely,
And, hopefully, come along to get along to one of your events. I want to say to the people that are listening, if you want to get in touch with Master Snow or anything that he's doing, we'll put some information in the show notes for you. But you can also find him on Facebook as well, and all the usual places. Master Snow, I want to say thank you very, very much. If you hang on for a moment, we'll have a quick chat after the.
Yes, sir, yeah. Thanks for the interview too.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you very much for the Living Martial Arts podcasters. We'll be back very, very soon with another podcast, another martial artist for you to listen to. Thank you, and hopefully speak to you and see you soon. Take care.